The answer is I don't know if you could speak to it now. There's some sort of a contraption there with it's green. I don't know if it's raking the leaves out or what that is, what that's doing. If we could just get an answer on that so I don't know if you know what that is through the chair. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, there's a system that we've now deployed there to try to rate that. It's basically, it's like a version of like a water lawnmower that's trying to take over, that's trying to cut the weeds and trying to cut all the vegetation to clear it out. Yeah, there's a system that we've now deployed. It's basically, it's
who's out there fighting the good fight and just give us an opportunity to really find out what you guys have been up to. But I just wanted to take a quick moment and read you guys' bio because it's very impressive and one so young. So I want to make sure so if you can just bear with me for a minute. So I'm just going to here to elder care, investing in the workforce, improving the regional public transportation, and addressing racial and health inequities. In her inaugural year, Senator Kennedy has been instrumental in advancing key legislative initiatives to enhance the well-being of Massachusetts residents. Yay! As a testament to her leadership in the care economy, Senator Kennedy has championed several significant bills. One, an act to promote enhanced care workers' minimum wage. This bill creates a $25 minimum wage for Chapter 257 care workers. The wages then indexed to inflation. 2, an act regarding families and children in need of assistance. This bill focuses on providing support and resources to families and children facing the challenges, ensuring they receive the necessary assistance to thrive. 3, an act relative to consumer health data. This legislative is designed to protect the health data of consumers, ensuring privacy and security in the handling of sensitive information. Before her election, Senator Kennedy served as the Chief Operating Officer at the YWCA Central Mass, where she advocated for women, children, and marginalized communities. Her public service also includes roles as Deputy Chief of Staff to former Lieutenant Governor Tim Murray and Deputy Assistant Secretary for Children, Youth, and Families at the Massachusetts Prosperous Future for Worcester and the broader Commonwealth, leveraging her experience and passion to drive meaningful change. Just a few quick updates since her role as Senator began. Her previous commitments from the last session: she was the chair of the Joint Committee on Children, Families, and Persons with Disabilities. She was the vice chair on the Joint Committee on the Cannabis Policy, Joint Committee on Agriculture, Joint Committee on Education, Joint Committee on Mental Health, Substance Use and Recovery, Joint Committee on Public Health, and Joint Committee on Transportation. Her new committee assignments for this year, if you go to masslegislative.gov legislators profile, you can check it all out.
And we can talk about it tonight. All right.
Thank you for the breathers.
No. It's a round of applause. So thank you. No, thank you. And let me first give a huge shout out to my incredible team, including my communications director, Giselle Rivera Flores, who's always behind the camera, and certainly a shout out to help get this coordinated for us here today. And we'll work on shortening the bio. But no, I'm actually glad to be reassigned as the Senate Chair of the Joint Committee on Children, Families, and Persons with Disabilities, which really speaks to the work we're looking to do to serve children, families, and making sure that all of our spaces are more accessible and that people of all abilities have the resources they need. And this year I'm Vice Chair of the Committee on Mental Health and Substance Misuse. So it's exciting to get back into this policy work.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so
Sorry
much.
if
I
anyone's
appreciate you sharing
eardrum.
that. Now, we also have the honor. The last time was just me and you. So
Yes.
this time, you guys have invited David to the table. So I'm just going to read David's bio. David Henry Argosky LaBeouf was born and raised in Worcester. I have to say the full name because it's so fabulous. His grandfather, Henry Bernard, was the founding union steward for Teamsters Local 170 at Consolidated Beverages.
All right.
His mom, Carol, also a lifelong Worcester resident, is a retired nurse from St. Vincent Hospital and former member of the MHA. His dad, Paul, a former Army medic, continues to work in the medical field. David attended Hurd Street Discovery Academy and Sullivan Middle School, graduated from South High in 2008 as a valedictorian and class president. He started college at Clark University before transferring to Harvard College as one of only 13 transfer students admitted internationally. David graduated in 2013 with a concentration in social studies, community engagement, and urban social change, and a secondary field in Spanish. David showed an interest in public service, advocacy, and local government from a young age. While in high school, he organized his classmates to make the case for increased school funding at the Worcester City Council meetings and was selected for the U.S. Senate Youth Program. While he was in college, he filmed many meetings on the Worcester School Committee for Local Government Access Television, Channel 12, and covered the Cambridge City Council for the Harvard Crimson. David also interned with the Worcester District Office of Congressman Jim McGovern and the Consumer Advocacy and Response and Fair Labor Divisions of the Attorney General's Central Mass Office. He was awarded the Presidential Public Service Fellowship and ultimately wrote his senior thesis on political participation among Worcester's Liberian and Vietnamese communities. During his time, David became involved as a mentor and later board member with the African Community Education, ACE, in Worcester, which provides African refugees and immigrants, youth, and their families with academic advising, leadership development, and community support. He volunteered on reconstruction efforts south of Santiago after the 2010 Chile earthquake as part of a language and public service program, and then was hired as a research assistant to a professor in the Institute for Quantitative Social Science, examining Latino voter engagement. I'm almost done, I promise. He's quite impressive. One of David's first paid jobs was an intern and staff assistant in the Worcester City Manager's office.
I thought my bio was long.
This is we're redoing our comms plan in my
Yes.
office too. So
By the third quarter, we're just going to say, this is Robyn and this is David.
I'll cut that out. I mean,
Last chapter.
Yeah.
I gotta get this out. Last chapter. So I have to say, he
Oh,
assisted with press
hello.
relations,
What's
provided
up, Eric? How you
extra
doing?
support for the License Commission, and
I
television the City
am just
Council.
hanging out.
This
me.
is one I really wanted to say.
Just me all by
David
my
also
lonesome.
worked on special projects, including economic development campaigns and the response to the Asian longhorn beetle infestation. So that's a conversation we're going to have offline.
yes.
Welcome to the virtual town hall, David.
Thank you, Sid. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm actually happy that you're hosting this in a section of a district that Senator Kennedy and I share. So I'm unique in that my rep district has 3 different state senators, but the majority is with Senator Kennedy.
thanks,
We're right
dude.
here
That,
at Stearns Tavern, which is
that was
across
quite
the
a-
street or
quite a
across
thing,
the way
dude.
from Coast
The
Pond, and really want to thank Seven Hills
State Police,
Foundation for opening up this space to
Worcester
us.
Police, they
So-
waste
All right, thank you. Well, I'm
Everyone's
excited to be here.
time.
I'm always honored
Like
when Ms. Giselle, your communications
They-
person, reaches
they
out
knew
to me
it.
and says,
They
"Would
just
you
wanted
like?"
to pull
I'm
out
like,
the toys.
yes. The answer is always yes. I mean, unless it's hiking, then no. Do want to shout out again. Please make sure that you tune in and watching 2 individuals who are doing great work in the community. Manny Alvarado from Manny J Media, Bill Shaner, he's on Twitch. So right now, make sure you're checking them out. And I'm just excited. And as you mentioned, Seven Hills just giving us the opportunity to utilize this space, and it's a space that you both share. So that's fantastic to get to go out and see such beautiful
Wow, you hear
space
that?
in your
Shout it
community.
out.
But before
Shout
we
it
get
out
into
by
the topics,
Positively
tell me
Susan.
what is happening
That's pretty
in
sweet.
the federal government.
I love it. We're coming right out of the gate.
I thought I'd lead up to it, but then I'm like, no. This is the questions on every man's mind. What is happening in the federal government?
Absolutely.
And hilarious
we're here virtually. We hope that folks will be able to join us, ask their questions. We do the virtual town hall so that more members of our community are able to join us. I have the privilege of not only representing the majority of the city of Worcester, but also Boylston, West Boylston, Berlin, Bolton, and Northborough, and want to make sure that when we have these conversations, they're as accessible to people. And so we find that virtual is the way to go to do that. And folks can, if you're not able to log in on this beautiful Friday evening, can join us or can watch later while you're maybe having your coffee tomorrow or Sunday morning. So thank you. And jumping right into the tough topics and the tough questions that we're getting and have gotten, and thank you to those who have submitted questions to us. There's no sugarcoating anymore. It's devastating. The hits that we are seeing, as I can only define as
send it to me,
cruel,
and I will send it along.
Inhumane. It's not uncommon that when a different party takes office, that a different policy mindset takes shape, and so we may have a conversation about a different way to deliver health care, for example, if it's under Republican administration versus Democratic administration. But really what we're seeing right now is I can only describe as slash and burn across the federal government, whether that's significant federal cuts that we see coming down the pike, and both the budget that the president recently signed, as well as through significant executive orders that he has put out, which are policy efforts to really reduce access to services. There's a couple kind of big executive orders that are going to have really significant impact. One is around updating work requirements and really expanding the age in which individuals are required to be working as they're receiving benefits, as well as another executive order that seeks to prohibit documented immigrants. Not undocumented immigrants, documented immigrants from being able to access significant federal supports, including things like Head Start programs. So really these major shifts in policy that are cutting across the board in federal government, and we'll get into it a little bit more in detail, but really trying to figure out the state level, to supplement, whether it's through legislation or through funding, supplement what's happening so that we can continue on the trajectory we've been on in Massachusetts to expand the rights of our residents.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I was first elected, I took office in 2019, so it was right before COVID happened. And I can tell you the fear and uncertainty that we're hearing from our constituents is very similar to what was going on during 2020, during COVID-19. The big difference was during COVID, as some of the medical technology was changing, we had a federal government that was being consistent in standardizing their policies. So we didn't have to worry about where our basic social safety net's going to be cut, where the ways that we fund public safety, access to health care, just essential pre-K school programs, our national parks. Was that going to be
rid of the
challenged
Bureau
or
of Labor
changed? And that was
Statistics
something
today.
that, even though
Just
there
saw
were
that.
differences of opinion on how to respond to the pandemic, what was the right way, what was the long-term costs, we didn't have that fundamental difference there. Now, what we're seeing is exactly similar to what the senator said, an upending of what we consider normal. There's been actions by the DOJ about requesting states about more information about voter data. There were times where there'd be shutting off funding to essential housing programs, and then it'd be in court the next day and then be turned back on, but then the federal government wouldn't turn that money back on. It's one of these things that, because of the way that the different levels of government work, a lot of the federal funds directly interlock with what we do at the state level, and it is really difficult to plan for that and to respond. And we do have ways that I can at least say the two of us are working to respond to that. But it is a major challenge, and it's really frustrating because Massachusetts especially is a state that gives more tax money to the federal government than we get back. And we're being penalized because of the fact that we're living true to our values and doing the right things by our residents.
Yeah, and you know, that must be frustrating. I mean, I'm very happy to live in Massachusetts, except when it snows. That's a whole different, you know, conversation. But I'm grateful to live in Massachusetts. And I know that we are being impacted. So how is the BBB, or the Big Beautiful Bill, affecting Massachusetts?
Big beautiful bill, that's me.
So, you know, we're going to see as it rolls out, part of what we're navigating is so much that's in that bill is phased in its implementation. And so that's the challenging part. So, you know, I think there's two major programs that I think from a state government perspective where we receive the most federal funding to be able to implement the programs. And I think that's kind of on a lot of folks' mind is Medicaid and SNAP. You know, those are two that collectively account for close to $20 billion in federal funding that we receive, 2.6 in SNAP and about another 12 to 14 billion in Medicaid that we receive annually. The bill as it's proposed is going to, or as it's been signed, will implement significant cuts to those programs. Now, some of those cuts don't go into effect until July or even further into 2026. So we're going to we're playing a little bit of kind of wait and see and try to understand where how those cuts will play out. But we're also being proactive in working to make sure that we're getting information out to our residents so that they know what's going on, what's happening, what they should anticipate, if they need to be looking at different eligibility requirements because of the updated work requirements, et cetera. And then looking to see what to our capacity we'll be able to fund at the state level to supplement some of those deepest cuts.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, one of the initial indications we got was Head Start, that the federal government was be pulling significantly back from that. And our legislature actually funded a major increase in Head Start grants to make sure that we were supplementing, you know, additionally what was coming from some other state grants. We also did set aside a portion of the state budget because we knew that it was going to be unpredictable and what could happen. So we wanted to have some type of buffer. And, you know, we do have a stabilization fund that is luckily healthy. You know, when we decide to kind of utilize that is really for kind of a crisis situation, which we are kind of headed towards if a lot of this is cut. I mean, one of the things that, you know, people don't realize is that when you look at these programs like SNAP and Mass Health, I mean, Mass Health, you know, Medicaid, Mass Health, that is something that employs or covers people that are disabled, that are seniors, that are children, that families depend on. And it's not because the families aren't working. 80% of SNAP recipients are working. And the rest of them are people that for some reason don't have the ability. So it's this false narrative that unfortunately has kind of latched on in other parts of the country and is latched on.
Thank you to everyone who came out to the election squad last night. Had a packed house.
Some difficulties,
that was fun.
And I feel horrible for our constituents that are affected by it.
August
and we
21st. Oh, you fucking bitch. Oh. No. My bad. My bad, everybody. Who let me do this?
Again, families working, families trying to do what's right and support themselves, and yet, even with commercial insurance, aren't able to pay for certain treatments
Everybody,
that are, again, life-saving. And, you know, the other thing I'd mention is we've been here before.
That's right,
we've been in a place where we haven't had the access to health care that we have today. You know, Massachusetts boasts we were the first state to have 98% of our residents covered with health insurance. Prior to that, individuals still got treatment when they were sick, but they got it through the emergency department, which was way more costly to begin with because it was at a point where it was a crisis for them versus preventative treatment.
Manny J.
But
Media
also,
is running the
it was funded, that treatment was funded by the uncompensated care pool, which our HMO plans were having to pay for, so then they jacked up our premiums. So these cuts come into effect it's going to dismantle a system that is working to get people access to wellness, to health care, to preventative care, to primary care, so that we can actually bring down the costs of the healthcare system. So it's not just, dollars that we're going to lose. It's going to be, we're going to see some major detrimental impacts that eventually is going to impact everybody, regardless if you're on Medicaid or not.
No, absolutely. Well, thank you guys for sharing that. I think especially for you guys, as you think about your constituents in Massachusetts, you think about, the deep cuts to Medicaid, the deep cuts to SNAP and food, and all these things that, the vulnerable, the young, the elderly, the marginalized, like it impacts them so much because this is truly something that they need and they look forward to. It's not a luxury.
Right.
It's not a privilege. It's a right. So, well, thank you guys for sharing your thoughts on that. And I just wanted to highlight, so Ms. Giselle is so lovely. She sent me so much information. Just a few other things I just wanted to point out that are other concerns for the BBB. I'm thinking Better Business Bureau. Let's not.
I have other names for the bill, but I don't think we're allowed to say it on Facebook Live.
Yeah. We are not. We are not.
We'll have an outtakes reel later for folks.
We'll do it for the people reel.
That's right.
That,
That's right.
So,
that's right.
The clean energy incentives reduction, no tax on overtime or tips, a boost to defense and border spending. So those are certainly concerns that we're all wrestling with in regards to this bill.
Yeah. And I know, just for folks to, in as David mentioned,
Streamboot.com.
we don't know the full scope yet, so we don't yet have an implementation to resolve. And quite frankly, if things, the cuts come as we expect that they will, there's going to come a point where we don't have enough revenue to cover. So there is a limit. But I do want to highlight that we also have a history of stepping in to fill what the federal government has failed to do or where they've abdicated their responsibility. One example is school meals. The federal government used to fully fund universal school meals, and then they decided that was no longer in their interest to do, and the state has stepped up over the last couple fiscal years to fund school meals because we believe that children not only should have access to another basic right, which is food, but that they're going to learn better, they're going to be more attentive, they're going to be more engaged if they're able to eat and be nourished. And so that's an example of a way in which we have, from a funding perspective, seen cuts from the federal government and have stepped in to provide support.
All right, well, thank you.
Actually, I do want to address one point. I think there's a big misconception that the tax on tips and tax on tips and overtime. Especially the no tax on tips. So if you're in a service industry job, when you do your taxes, most individuals take the individual deduction. They don't itemize their deduction. People that are salaried, usually up to over $100,000, are taking the individual deduction. They're not deducting it. That's only when that kicks in. So that was a real red herring that was being used by the federal the Trump administration and their allies, saying that it's going to, give more immediate relief to, lower wage earners and different things like that. It's not going to. That was really a great messaging tactic and toy that they were playing with to try to get people to be on board with some of these detrimental things. And, again, if you're not going to have many of individuals in the service industry that are working retail rely on Medicaid and Mass Health because a lot of these corporations aren't paying a living wage. So that's just something really to think about with that. And I think that's kind of a narrative that we get is like, oh, well, it's going to be giving direct relief back. Of those tax cuts, over 41% of all those tax cuts are going to like the top 5% of income earners. It's not helping people majority of the people that we represent in our districts.
Right. And that's an important point to emphasize, that these cuts to working families, the cuts to those who are most vulnerable in our communities, those cuts, that funding is going to subsidize
anyone get their mail-in ballots this week?
And those are big components of the tax package that's in that bill. Extending Trump's previous tax cuts to corporations and to those that are the highest 1% of earners. And
I do not know.
and I think I saw something today that they're building a golden banquet hall in there for $200 million. So
Yeah.
again, when you budget documents are about values, and when you see the values that are coming out of the federal government in terms of who they care for and what they care for, it's pretty frightening.
It's troubling. So, you guys both mentioned federal and, talking about federal overreach, right? So what are things that you guys are both doing to push back against federal overreach?
Well, I think the most recent example of that is the SHIELD law.
Yes.
That the legislature just passed and the governor is signing, that really speaks to, we know since the fall or the Dobbs decision in the fall of Roe v. Wade that many states across the Commonwealth have been incredibly hostile to reproductive rights and have essentially outlawed access to reproductive care. And we know that Massachusetts here, as we value the right of women and individuals to make decisions about their own bodies, that and their own reproductive choices, that many individuals come to Massachusetts to get that care, not only reproductive care, but also gender-affirming care that we continue to provide and keep legal here. And so what this law does that we just passed will protect those residents from other states that come here, that will protect doctors who are coming here to provide that care by saying that providers are prohibited by law now from sharing their data or information with third parties. So if the Attorney General of Texas wants to come up to Massachusetts and collect data on residents from Texas that may have come here for medical care, it'll be against the law for providers to share that information.
We also
which I don't know where they are.
Equity Act that prevents discrimination against students because of the fact that they speak English as another language as their first language, or because of their immigration status. You can't discriminate. Public education, fortunately, is a right that's enshrined in the Massachusetts Constitution, and so that was just emphasizing that. We also invested $5 million in an immigrant defense fund through our budget, and that's really to help immigrants that are facing deportation issues that are not criminally related, to make sure that they're given due process.
I got sweet Gus on the show right now.
3 or 4
Gus,
years ago,
say hello to the
a
camera.
traditional federal operation, you assume that's being done under the guise of law and due process. Now there is no due process with some of the way that these operations are being done, and so we have to make sure that if we don't defend the rights for the most vulnerable, then none of us have rights in this country.
Absolutely, and I think that's a big misperception that, in principle and in law, that immigration status is a civil matter. Right now, they have completely kind of upended, as Dave was mentioning, the due process there, but. Individuals are not guaranteed right to an attorney in civil matters as they are in criminal matters. And so having this defense fund is making, as David mentioned, is part of what we're trying to do to make sure that those that cannot afford access to an attorney are still able to have that access so that that they can be protected and get their due process through this time.
All right, thank you. So I understand that from an intellectual perspective, right? But you guys both mentioned the vulnerable, the immigrants, the refugees. How are they expected to cope with all that's happening?
This is honestly what keeps me up at night. I think it's so devastating on so many levels. I mean, first and foremost, we are a nation of immigrants. Since we first arrived and stole land that we're standing on right now, we have been a nation of immigrants that has, generation after generation has been made stronger because not only of the vibrancy of the different cultures that have come here, that have opened business, have shared their food, have shared their art, have shared their music, but also have built our workforce and sustained our workforce. And so I can't say more than it breaks my heart to think that right now in our community that there are families, there are individuals who are in fear, living in fear, that are doing everything right, let's be clear, doing everything right to raise their families, to go through the immigration process as the law stands today, are doing their best.
Bessie has been so...
And because of what's happening, what the Trump administration has unleashed in our communities,
very grown girl.
There's incredible fear. And I hate to say, they have the right to be afraid. We are trying, as we mentioned with the Immigrant Defense Fund, to find ways in which we can supplement and provide and protect from a state perspective, and we're going to continue to do that. There are a few bills that are pending right now that I'm hopeful we can get to some consensus on and move that will further protect immigrants. But at the end of the day, federal law supersedes state law. And so when they're, taking these federal actions, that we don't have the legal authority
Hello,
to
everybody.
stop them
if you
per
have
se.
a question for Robyn,
And so,
Kennedy, or David
it's
LeBeouf,
incredibly devastating. And
feel free to
it's,
throw it in the chat, and I'll send
again,
it along.
for all the reasons why
our
we are
moderator here.
fortunate, why we benefit
Just-
from being a
just
nation
chilling
of
and watching
immigrants, by
this,
being a place that people come to build their lives.
Just me.
We also know
Capacity
that
on the stream
they're
today.
in our workforces and that we are heading towards a crisis of our economy when folks are staying home and not going to work, that we're going to see this crisis unfold and
some
when people
Modelo's
can't
left
get
over from
care for their
camping.
loved ones, or they can't get the classes that
Friday
they're looking
night,
for
maybe.
because there's a large percentage of our professors that are immigrants, or they can't get access to healthy foods because we know that that the farm workers, so many are immigrants. And so immigrants fill workforces at all levels, and we're going to see this crash, unfortunately. And so my heart goes out, and I'm hoping that we can continue to survive past this point and continue to support those who've chosen to make Massachusetts home.
Thank you.
Again, immigrants are just as American as someone who's born here. If you come to this country because you have hope for an opportunity and want to make this your home, that's the spirit of what the United States is supposed to be out, the dream that a lot of people are given. I think there's, again, a misconception that, what the immigration system is. It's a very complicated, very expensive system, and trying to compare, situations to people back in the 1920s to now and how those systems worked and what was the right way, what was the wrong way. At the end of the day, when you look at what's going on our streets of seeing masked individuals coming, not discussing what charges are, ripping children away from their parents, going into people that are executing their responsibilities and following the law in courts, sending them to places and not notifying where they are, that's not right. Just think of the common sense and think of the humanity in that. And that's
A public
something that,
noise.
when
What's
anyone
up?
reaches out to our office, the only thing we ask is what your
No
address
problem
is
at
to make
all.
sure that they've contacted the right address.
Love to
We
host.
never ask about citizenship status.
In a hosting
we never
mood
ask
this
about
week.
political affiliation. We never
know
ask
if anybody,
if they participated in the political process.
over at
before,
Steel and
because
Wire
we
last night,
recognize
watching this
that
right now, but that was
as
really
people,
fun.
you
Thank you,
are
everyone who
valuable
came
in
out.
this community.
First,
And it doesn't
Worcester
matter if you've been here
Selections
for 5
election
days,
squad.
5
Big
decades, if your
success.
family's got 5 centuries of heritage, in this land. It's about building a community that's stronger. And if we continue to divide like this and allow and embrace or try to negotiate with a policy that wants to hurt and break people apart, that's not the country that we are. That's not the Massachusetts that started that revolution in 1775. And so I can assure you that through legislation, through our budget actions, through the way that we show up when different communities need us to be there, when people need to know what their rights are, when people need to have someone that's going to make not necessarily just a performative statement, but to make a real action to hold power accountable, we will be there for them. That's what I can offer personally, and I just hope that our neighbors just continue to support each other.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much.
And adding in of kind of actions we're taking, the governor just announced yesterday that she's launching, one of the major cuts that we've seen happen since the beginning of the Trump administration has been a continuous reduction of NIH funding, which is going to have a tremendously unnecessarily painful impact on our communities. We're talking about treatments that life-saving treatments that individuals are utilizing right now that's coming out of this research. We're talking about the future of our healthcare and our ability to remain innovative and on the front lines. And we also know that we have historically been a place as a country where immigrants from around the world have come to take part in that research, in that medical science, in that innovation. And we see as that's both as that funding's rolling back, but also as the fear of status is continuing to exist globally, that people are going elsewhere, that we're losing our status already as the lead innovator of the world in terms of science and medicine. And so one of the things that, as I mentioned, the governor announced yesterday was creating a fund within the Massachusetts that will help invest and try to, again, supplement some of that research and those research dollars so that in Massachusetts we can continue to be the knowledge state that is proud of our research, is proud of our academic institutions and the work that comes from it, both in the student body as well as in the research and advancements we see.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much, and I appreciate that. I'm going to have to shift away from that a little. I think we could certainly spend a lot of time on those subjects because it's so important that we only have 1 hour tonight.
And we want to say something happy today. So.
So we're going to shift away.
For everyone watching at home, we want to make sure it's
First of all, thank you to the community that showed up and that's watching right now. And as the senator mentioned, those who are going to be joining later with their coffee, tea for me. Watching that. We appreciate you. Like, everything they do is for you guys. They're out here fighting, for you guys, not just for some, but for everyone in the community. So I wanted to shift a little bit. So recently, the Massachusetts fiscal 2026 budget has passed, and both of you guys have budget items that were passed. Can you guys just give me a brief overview of what that was for you guys?
Sure, yeah. I mean, one of the things I can talk about is some of the local things in my district. So again, my district doesn't always coincide with the senators. So, I have, for example, Leicester is a community that I represent.
I think our next city council
one of
meeting
the
is
earmarks
until-
I got was to support a
When's our next
medical
city
rights
council
program
meeting?
for seniors and also some veterans
got
outreach
this summer
for Project New
schedule.
Hope, which is located on James Street, which serves the whole county. Wonderful organization. Maine South CDC to help
it's the
support
14th.
their ambassadors program and the placemaking activity over there.
To
And then
the
school
left,
lessons over
that
at Coast Pond.
is
So you're gonna start
positively
seeing more and more of that activity,
Susan?
picking up, and so
Or
that was something that
Suzanne?
was funded through that. And then together, the two of us filed and was actually able to get at the end
And
some
she
funding for Worcester
is
Community
a
Midwifery
local
to form a
personality
birth
of some
center,
kind. I really don't know.
here in Central Massachusetts,
I'll
and
throw the
Pernay Family
Instagram
Health, which is in
link
Green Island, and
into
does the baby
chat.
or newborn visiting program to help screen for postpartum and different things like that. And then the Mass Commission for the Blind, that's an effort that I've been supporting since I was elected, to add more social workers to help people with different visual impairments to make sure they can live healthy and sustainable lives.
Okay.
Absolutely. And
Thank you.
I would start by saying, and you see two of us here today, but we're very fortunate that the delegation, both Senator Mike Moore, as well as Representatives O'Day, Mahoney, Donahue, and Keefe, that we work collectively together to make sure that we're delivering for the district. And so part of our work is the House goes first with the budget, and they put forward a bunch of amendments, and then we have a meeting to see what was able to go through there, and then Senator Moore and I see what we can be able to do to fill and to add to that capacity. And so that's why you see a lot of things happen in the House and not in the Senate. It's not because one did better than the other. It's because we divide and conquer so that we can deliver more back to our community. And between the FY26 GAA, which is the general appropriations, the operational budget, as well as the fair share, the fair share budget, which has been revenue that has been overperforming. So we were able to do a supplemental budget with that, in addition to the 3 bond bills we've already done so far.
Yeah.
We've collectively delivered over $20 million back to the district in the last fiscal year. And, that's both here in the city of Worcester, and then, as mentioned, many of us also represent town. So for the budget, for me, since I've gotten into office, I've been really focused twofold. One, in looking at the care economy, as you talked about, and looking at where there's some particular programs that really uplift and support historically marginalized communities. And then the other, real priority of mine has been investing in communities within our city and in my district that haven't received state support. So really, we've looked at some things ranging from, an early literacy program through the Worcester Education Collaborative, looking at, Pernay, as was
some Worcester
mentioned,
thing
as the
I'm
Worcester
following.
Midwifery, looking at Together for Kids,
And
which does
I'm very
early
excited about and
intervention
know very
support
little
for
about
early education and
is
care kiddos
The
and kids
Worcester
in
Nuts
preschool,
time trials.
as well as looking at investing in some of the cultural organizations. So
It
the
seems to
Black
be who
Heritage
can
Foundation that
drive
hosts
through
the
Kelly
Juneteenth
Square
and
the
does a whole
fastest.
year
People
of
go to the
education
peanut
around Black history and Black culture and Black experience.
which seems
and
dangerous, but
the Worcester Caribbean
whimsical.
Festival,
So
which does
I'm
a
here for it.
phenomenal job of bringing culture to our community. And so this year we've added Casita Cultura to that. We've added Worcester Pride to those funding earmarks to make sure that, again, we're investing in our community, we're uplifting our community, we're celebrating our community, particularly those that have been historically marginalized. We've got funding for the YWCA for some of their youth violence prevention programs that are geared towards girls and young women, because we know that a lot of these, particularly young girls of color, that as society turns, that they face the biggest impact in terms of body image, in terms of self-confidence, et cetera. So we could go on and on. And then we also support very particular projects in our towns that really is difficult for the town to come up with the funding independently. I represent Tohoto High School out in Boylston, which is the Berlin-Boylston School District. They need a new parking lot because the student population has outgrown the existing parking. And so we were able to, myself and Representative Meg Kilcoyne, were able to get funding for the parking lot so that they can expand. So really a wide range of support we've offered.
Well, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you sharing. So I do have two specific questions just for you, and it's like, so just briefly. So you mentioned so many organizations that are near and dear to you and so many things that you're passionate about. And with so many pressing needs and important needs, how do you prioritize, like which gets the funding?
So I think, I start with listening to the community. And so that's, what we did, when I first ran for office, when I, even before that, coming from the YWCA, coming from community work, understanding where some of these pockets of underinvestment have existed, and then really looking to see, like I said, where are there organizations that at a fundamental level, if we help them grow capacity, can really shift for the Commonwealth. Example of that, we fund the Mass Women of Color Coalition, and they're doing a lot of work to help more women of color run for office, for example, or to grow economically. And so really trying to figure out where the greatest needs are, where the greatest gaps are, and where there are opportunities to, again, invest in organizations that may not have seen that state support before.
All right, thank you so much. And Representative LaBeouf, so for you, what do you prioritize?
So it's a similar approach. I think I look at it from what are the problems that I consistently hear in my district from residents, from neighborhood groups, from, as you're just being present, and is there a way that with some of the investment of our state dollars that we can actually find an answer to that. The medical rides program, for example, was in response to the fact that we had a bus line that was cut in Leicester when some of the transportation funding was lost from the RTA a few years ago. Luckily, we're in a much better situation with the RTA now. Same with swim lessons. The swim lessons program came from actually many neighborhood groups that met in this building that were saying, why can't our kids, we've got kids that live over on Lakeside or Washington Heights or right around Mill Street, that there's this beautiful body of water but can't access it or don't know how to. And then I think the other thing that I know both of us do, because I know some of the amendments that my colleague has filed, we look for what are some systemic challenges that we can fix with not necessarily funding, but even a policy change. For example, in this year's budget, there was an amendment that not all of it got passed, but I had an amendment to remove the notice to quit when receiving rental assistance. My philosophy on that is if you need help, it's better to keep you in your home, not wait until you're about to lose it. If someone is falling, you grab them before they hit the pavement, not when they're on the ground screaming. The amendment actually says we're going to do a study to look at whether or not removing that notice to quit would be financially viable. And fortunately, as the chair of Children and Families on the Senate side, my colleague will be helping to put that study together.
Yes.
So it's a good pathway there. And the same thing when we expanded health insurance to state workers a couple of years ago. That was done through the budget, where you're able to find, can I make a kind of fill that piece of that puzzle right
Yeah.
now.
All right. Well, thank you guys
And I'm
so
sorry, I'm going to add
much.
one more
Yeah, no,
point.
go
'cause
on.
There has
one more
not
priority,
been
which,
a
has been, really critical is for me, and I know for my colleagues, is
question
regional
about
equity.
Medicaid yet.
It
But
is shocking.
I mean, we have
and
mass health.
it's
possible.
shocking how much money of the budget stays in the city of Boston, and really to the detriment of growth for really for the ability across the Commonwealth to be able to grow and thrive. David mentioned the RTAs. That's a perfect example. They've been a stagnant investment for years, and we've seen what that means when routes get cut systematically, when we can't hire enough drivers because there's not enough resources, and meanwhile, year after year, buckets of money get poured into the MBTA. And so we've been able to advocate and fight for doubling from $94 million to over $200 million annual operating funding for the RTAs, so that we can invest in our current system and then look to expand capacity so that every resident in the Commonwealth has access to reliable, now very affordable, because we've made fare free
Look, yeah, look at that lighting. It's like a biblical painting.
Public transportation, which is better for our economy, better for our residents, our workforces, our employers, and for our environment. So,
And that's
Thank
on
you.
top of the workforce funding that we get to actually hire the bus drivers. I mean, that's one of the things is that, you can have fare-free transit, but if no one's operating operating the buses, and that's something we also are able to add on that. And that was specifically for RTA drivers. I think people always assume that all the transportation funding goes to the MBTA, and a lot of it does. And, but we've luckily, because our delegation is so in sync, we've been able to kind of pull that lever of money back out to the center of the state. And
All
hopefully
right.
we're going to continue to pull it and keep it here.
Thank you so much. So can you guys speak to the budget item for a pay increase for early educators?
yeah, no. So, starting last budget year, between the House and the Senate, we both took a piece of it. We implemented in totality the Common Start legislation, which has been a bill pushed by our early education and care providers, educators, families for years, which sought to make early education more affordable and accessible for every child in our Commonwealth. And so a big piece of that, again, there's multiple ways it came in, but both in the past 2 years, we've invested over $1.5 billion each year annually for our early education and care programs. That's through annualization of the C3 grants, called C3. That's about investing in our workforce, investing in our providers, investing in creating more early education slots. With this funding, and especially because it's now annualized, providers are able to actually put that money into the salaries of their early educators. And so therefore we are able to start uplifting the field, start to fill classrooms with educators so that we can then fill classrooms with our littlest learners.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. So what I'm going to, Giselle does not work for me, but what I'm going to implore her to do, because there's so much information that you guys are giving. I know that the constituents are, getting, like, they want this information, right? So to put that information, if we could put it in the chat right now, what's going on, where to go to access all this information to make sure they have it, because I know that I'm fascinated. I know those that are watching are also fascinated and they want to hear it. So Giselle, sorry, I did not mean to give you extra work, but I really do appreciate it. There's so much information. I feel like we need to do a part 2 of this virtual town hall, Q2 part 2.
Always good to say yes.
So I just wanted to shift and talk about what is the Fair Share Amendment.
Oh, sure. Do you want to start?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So the Fair Share Amendment was actually passed on a ballot question in 2022, which was raising a 4% tax on incomes that were over $1 million. And what is unique about this is that those funding can only go specifically to transportation and education. And so when that question was being proposed and it passed overwhelmingly, it had to be over 70%. People were saying, "Oh, all the millionaires are going to leave. It's going to bankrupt the state." Well, we had like a $2 billion surplus just from that funding that we had, fortunately, to be able to plug in some of these gaps from the federal government. Again, it can only go to education and transportation, but these are vital programs. Universal free school meals, that was something that we were able to fund through the Fair Share funding. The increases for higher education endowments, that was something that was able to be funded through that. And then also some local projects that we're able to do. Classroom materials and increased library access to books for English language learners and materials that actually have, characters that reflect the population of the schools. Those are some local amendments that our legislative delegation was able to get. Similar to specific projects, veterinary tech equipment over at Leicester High School for their vocational program. That was something, part of my allocation I was able to get. And it is such a valuable asset that other states are trying to copy us now. Pennsylvania, I know, is looking to try to run something like this because it's a way to make sure that those who are benefiting significantly from our public benefits in the economy are giving back, because we have a flat income tax. So if you make, $20,000 a year to make $5 million a year, you're paying the exact same percentage of income tax, and it wasn't fair. And we took action with that. And actually, both of us campaigned for that question when we were running.
Thank you so much. So, Senator, I know that housing was not a part of the Fair Share Acts, but it did play a role in the overall budget. Can you speak to that?
Sure. So, I think that the biggest impact we're going to see is the affordable housing bond bill that we passed last year and that we're already starting to roll out. That's really supporting programs here or housing projects here in Worcester, like the Housing Authority, the work that they're doing up at Curtis Apartments, as well as we know Lakeside, as we sit right here on Coes Pond. That Lakeside is the renovations are coming soon to there as well, to be able to build housing for all income levels. So from low-income housing through low-income housing tax credits and expanding that program to workforce housing to increase production to different types of models, manufactured homes, tiny homes, different types of models, so that we know we're in a housing crisis. We know that we need to support families today in helping them stay housed, and there's a lot of housing support programs that exist, like RAFT, rental assistance for families in transition, home-based, things like that. But we also know that we need to up our production and also be clear that we need to stay on top of it and make sure that we're keeping pace with production of affordable housing that we're producing in market rate housing. And so there's a lot of funding through the Affordable Homes Act, which was a $4.2 billion bond bill that will allow for this production to be jump-started.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. So there's a question that I have to ask, but it's a question that has been floating around on Facebook. So in the November 2024 election, Massachusetts voters approved question 1 by overwhelming margin, over 71%. So what are your thoughts on this? Many say that it's unconstitutional.
Yes. Well, so I think, and that's absolutely a concern I have. And I think, the House and Senate have taken a slightly different approach or process. So I'll speak for the Senate in where we stand. And I will say, I do want to be clear that and transparent, I have constitutional issues. There's 3 separate branches of government. The executive branch, which is where the auditor sits, and historically she has audited executive agencies. That has been part of her oversight, is within the executive agencies. There's the judicial branch and there's the legislative branch. We all operate independently in our role constitutionally within the government. And I always give the example of, just like the legislature can't tell the judicial branch how to set their dockets, we may want to help them prioritize, but we don't tell them. That's the business of the judicial branch. Just like the judicial branch doesn't tell the governor how to appoint secretaries for her cabinet. That's the business of the executive branch that the governor is the head of and that she determines. What's concerning to me is the potential for what is and has been noted as potentially at risk of being unconstitutional is the executive branch, the auditor, providing recommendations to the legislature in terms of how to do our business, which is part of what goes into an audit. And so, I think that is a very real question. I will also say, because I think this was not included in much conversation that happened during the campaign, the legislature is financially audited every single year. If you go to our website, the Senate website, the House website, you can actually see we have a third-party CPA that is hired that does a full audit on how every dollar within the Senate is spent and within the House. And so that information is available if folks are actually interested in understanding how we are financially or how we are spending money in the Senate. And then there's the open checkbook on mass.gov that tells you how every single penny, not even every dollar, every penny of the budget is spent, what agencies it goes to, how it's administered.
There's really not
all
much
of that is
you can
available
do
online
about
as well.
The corruption.
I think,
in
you
the
know, I would
state
say,
legislature.
you know,
Short of ripping the whole thing
it
up,
did pass,
starting
and
over.
so what the Senate has done, similar to when the auditor does an audit within any other state agency, we put together a subcommittee within the Senate that meets with the auditor to say, what is the scope of the audit? What are you looking at, and what materials do you need to be able to conduct that audit? So that subcommittee met with the auditor's office. The auditor said she is looking for everything for the past 10 years. That's also a question that has to be considered because laws are always proactive. You know, no law says, okay, we're going to look back at the past 10 years and see if you've committed this crime or if you've violated this law. It's proactive, not retroactive. So that's something to look at. But this committee met because we disagree or everything is a broad set of materials. So the subcommittee in the Senate hosted a hearing to get a sense from the public, from experts, from constitutional attorneys, et cetera, of what that what our next steps should be, and they'll be putting a report together for the Senate President around what our next steps based on this expert opinion should look like, and you know, if need be, you know, there may be something that goes through the court process to give a determination. So that's where we stand right now. And so again, we will follow the law. I will, you know, provide any information that I'm expected to provide and make sure that I'm, you know, doing as we need to do.
All right, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you sharing that.
Speak to that.
So I know you're going to speak to it, like just briefly.
Yeah.
I'm just going to let you know. So we only have about 4 minutes left. So I want to give you guys an opportunity. That's what I'm saying. We should advocate for part two. But
Yes.
but I'm going to give you a chance to answer that. But I do want to get to at least one question from the audience. So they have a question. So I'll have you speak, and then I'll ask a question from the
I'll
audience.
just say, you know, I mean, we just want to make sure that everything is done the right way. You know, lots of times ballot questions have to go through a judicial review, and this is similar to other ballot questions that have gone through judicial review. So.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate you guys sharing. The first question is from the audience, so thank you for submitting it. What happens to heat field assistance, and is it funded from the federal government?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's, yes.
Yeah.
So that'll be something that if get cut, we'll be looking to see what we can do.
We put in a state supplement to that, but that's typically on top of what we get from the federal government. But that'll be a question that once that comes to us, we'll have to deal with.
All right, thank you. Second question is, what can be done about rent stabilization?
So there is legislation pending right now before the legislature that would remove the prohibition on rent control or rent stabilization, which would then turn it to every community to make a determination of whether they want to implement rent control or rent stabilization. So that legislation is pending. It actually had a hearing this week.
Yeah,
and
the Senate bill did. The House bill hasn't yet.
Okay,
You
so
love
the Senate
we're
bill,
looking
we have
into
new
it.
rules
Yes,
this
yeah.
year, which that'll take a whole separate hearing to town hall to talk about. But one of the things is bills, which is actually going to help us
highly
do
doubt
more
that the rent
legislation,
control question
is
will
that
get
bills go
passed,
to
but I
separate
hope it
chambers.
does.
So the Senate version of the bill has had its hearing, as is the legislative process. Now the committee, the housing committee that it's before housing.
So Senate went to municipalities.
Okay,
House went to housing.
Okay. So we're in municipalities. The committee will decide whether they're going to
Wait.
vote the bill out favorably or send it to a study. If it's voted favorably, then it will go to the Senate for a vote.
All right, and then final question from the audience. So please re-explain, I know this is going to be challenging, what happens to Mass Health due to Medicaid cuts?
Mass Health is Medicaid.
Yeah.
So that's the short answer is every state has their own name for the Medicaid program in the state. So it could be PA Health or
Medi-Cal.
Medi-Cal. In Massachusetts, we call it Mass Health.
All right, awesome. And so thank you guys so much for sharing. Just 30 seconds, if you guys could share any constitutional constituent services that you could send folks to help digest policy, because it's a lot. to read and understand and grasp. And this town hall certainly helps. But any services that you guys could recommend anywhere, anything that someone's doing that you say like go to them, you can certainly hear it, make it more digestible.
So, certainly we'll do a plug that as I see my esteemed comms director holding up a sign for me. She always keeps me on track here. But certainly a plug for our social media, because for me, and this is an example of it, I want to get as much information out to our community. I want folks to be armed with the facts, with know what's happening, be transparent about how we feel about these issues or what we're focusing on or where we're focusing, and hear the feedback. Government should be a dialogue. Hear the feedback on what folks have. So I'm going to suggest that, again, go to our social media, go to our website. It's Sen Robyn Kennedy, SEN, Robyn, ROBYN, Kennedy, KENNEDY, all one word. It's at Sen Robyn Kennedy for our socials, and at, senrobynkennedy.com for our website. So we have as much information there. I'll also put out my email address. It's Robyn, ROBYN.Kennedy@masenate.gov. I see all the emails that come in. My incredible team helps me respond and make sure that folks are getting either the constituent support they need or the answers to legislative questions. But I see everything that comes in so that I can stay on top of what folks are talking about or interested in or concerned about. But certainly feel free to email if you have any specific questions.
Thank you.
And then make it easy. My website is REP David, DAVID, LeBoeuf, LEBOEUF. I know the vowels get people confused. .org. All my socials are linked up there. I have different social addresses for each account because I've had them for a while from my old life. But also we have we have a constituent services page where you can put in a request for certain things. I do monthly office hours twice a month in different parts of my district. I know the senator does the same, so you can contact us there. I actually just launched a Substack that you can go on the website and subscribe to, and I mean that's the best way to do it. And again,
coming in on my turf.
Pretty accessible. If you send us an email, if you want to schedule a one-to-one or a coffee or something with us, we'll make sure that happens. It may take a little bit of time with some of our voting schedules, but
I gotta get off
we're
Substack.
happy
I
to
hate
meet with
Substack.
constituents anytime. And also, both of us
I
go
gotta
to
move it
neighborhood
over
meetings
to
quite frequently.
Ghost,
I
I
know different
think.
parts of the district don't have as
It's a much better
many,
deal.
but we'll
You
go
could
to
actually
public
do
meetings,
more
we'll go to community events, and that's always the best way. Just stop us and say, hey, I
With
don't
like
know
a
what this
team,
is.
which is
And if we don't have the answer right
sort of
away,
have
we'll
now,
find the
so.
person that knows the answer for you.
And it's cheaper.
And before I get in trouble, we also have a Substack. So I also want
Ed too, Robyn?
encourage folks to sign up for it on our website so that we can send. I mean, we did an entire budget recap, for example, through our Substack, so that
Ed too,
we're putting out
Robyn?
that information proactively. So it'll show up in your email, if you sign up. So,
City manager has a
and yes,
Substack, I'm a
absolutely, we do
Substack.
monthly
There's
office hours.
Substack,
in
major
all
Substack
6 of the
inflation
communities that we
going on in
represent.
work.
Awesome.
So we do want to be as accessible as possible.
Your communication teams are proud of you guys.
Yes.
Well, Senator Kennedy, Representative LeBoeuf, thank you guys so much for coming on, for doing the town hall, for truly breaking down some of the questions that your constituents have. It certainly helped me, and I know that it's helped those that are tuned in. So thank you guys so much. We appreciate all that you do, and please continue the good fight. We are looking forward to some great things out of you all. So thank you.
Absolutely, and we're going to keep doing these town halls. We're going to keep finding ways to get information out to our community members. If you have questions that didn't get answered or we didn't quite answer them the way it was helpful for what you were looking for, follow up with us. We're happy to respond as best we can.
All right, and I do have to shout out once again, thank you for Managing Media for streaming this live on Facebook. Thank you to Bill Shana, who's streaming it on Twitch.
That's right.
Thank you to First Seven Hills for this beautiful space, for allowing us to take care of that. Thank you to Miss Giselle, Jaime, everybody that's here. Thank you guys. He found the light, y'all. So we like good lighting.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you to the constituents that tuned in, that asked a question. We appreciate each and every one of you. I am positively Suzanne, and as always, I am happy to serve my community alongside these great people.
Take care.
Amazing. We did it. We did it. Oh, yeah. What do we have here at the end? Oh, I thought Manny was zooming in on that guy. And I was like, damn, Manny's doing some really cool shit right at the end there. But hey, anyway, thank you to everyone for tuning into that. If you took anything away from it, that's great. I was asked to, sort of amplify this on Twitch, and I was like, yeah, sure. Haven't been on Twitch in a while. I mean, the city council summer schedule, not much going on worth streaming about. Of course, everyone else on the program is much too busy to be joining me on a Friday afternoon. But I have no life, so I am going to continue to sit in front of my computer and write for many hours after this. Got to write about the preliminary election. I have to figure out who Jessica Peppel is. Oops. Yeah. Have to figure out who Jessica Peppel is. We shall see. If anybody knows anything about at-large city council candidate Jessica Peppel, she's the only one that I don't know anything about. But so I have to do my Peppel's research. Anyway, thank you everyone for tuning in. The Woot Nanny guys are going to be at Ralph's Rock Diner tomorrow. Sean Connolly is hosting the kilt contest. So bring your kilt to the Ren Fair at Ralph's Rock Diner. You'll get judged by Sean on the quality of your kilt. No pulling any Braveheart style moves with the kilt. The kilt must stay over the junk at all times. Thank you to everyone who came out to the election squad event last night. That was really fun. And the next one's going to be even more fun. So August 21st, Steel and Wire. Would love to see you there. And I think that's wow. Rich, you're gonna have to message me that independent. Don't put the actual address online here, but I want to take a drive by that. I want to know like what kind of guy that is. That's a very specific, weird voter. Maybe it's just somebody who's like, yeah, sure, whatever. But you just put your sign. I don't care. They have like no politics. RFK Community Alliance, Jessica Peppel. I am 90% sure. Yes, it's the same Jessica Peppel. And I only really know that through a little bit of Googling I've done this afternoon. So, okay. Greenwood Street seems like the street to be taking a drive down. Cool. All right. Well, I'm getting out of here. Everyone have a great weekend. I hope everyone's enjoying their summer. We'll be back for the next city council meeting, which is the 14th, I think. I don't know. These summer months get pretty hazy. As far as Worcester Sex goes, people are getting a lot out of the last piece that I wrote about West Boylston Street, the standoff with no one, and people seem to be really liking the interview with Keith Linares, District 1 candidate, our next District 1 counselor. So listen to that, read that. Both are long and meaty, and we'll hold you over, but I'll have some more stuff up soon. So thank you to everyone for tuning in, and we will see you next Tuesday.